Good afternoon, people. Back after the holidays. Stuart's with us, Stuart Lockhead. Phil Attridge is here, and Alex Grant and myself, Norris Stewart. First question time of the new year. Happy New Year to everybody. Well, what did you think, boys? Alex?
Yeah, I mean, because of the backdrop of what's happened this week, earlier in terms of the voting on childcare and free school meals and all the rest of it, it was an interesting mix. I mean, but John Lamont's attack, I think, was a perfectly good idea to say your white paper offers a number of things which aren't properly costed, and you've used the examples of time period and other countries and whatever that suit your argument, but if you actually look at, we've asked some questions, if you look at a wider context, it's nothing like as good as you think. I think he finally answered that reasonably well, but I still maintain that her opening gambit about, if you look at the last 30 years, I've seen lots of statistics, and Gordon McIntyre, Kent in Business for Scotland, has produced 30-year stats, because he doesn't have any data beyond the 30 years, but there's some indications even there that I've seen that says before that there was a surplus in Scotland which has been going south of the border. So I still maintain, and I don't think today was any exception, that it's the economy stupid that's going to decide this vote. I'm absolutely certain about it. And okay, included in that will be, they're going to cut the Barnett formula and 25 billion cuts and all the rest of it. But I don't think the SNP is sufficiently and consistently robust enough at saying, for the last 30 years, we've been in surplus, the money's all gone south of the border, we wouldn't have anything like the deficit that's accrued to us if that had been the case. So her argument was bullshit. But I don't think he actually responded that well to that.
What she essentially took the last 10 years, 5 of which he replied, we were in surplus.
Yeah, but now she mentioned 30 in her question.
Yeah, but she took 1984 to today, 2014. Where did she get the figures? Interesting.
Well, she said she got them from the civil service.
Well, I kind of agree that she came on, but I think she's obviously been learning economics from Gordon Brown. And to quote Eric Hobsbawm about Gordon Brown, who everybody thinks is a great chancellor, he can talk economics, which is what she was doing today.
Yeah.
Trouble is, neither of them understand it.
No, I agree.
And you've only got to listen to old Labour grandees like Dennis Healey, listen to them all from the Thatcher government and that. Who bankrolled the tax cuts? Who bankrolled everything over that 30 years? It was Scotland.
Which
So to do that, then therefore Scotland must have been in surplus.
But I don't think he said that very clearly.
No, he didn't, and it was quite obvious. Other than that, I thought her approach was quite good, but and then of course he wiped her out anyway at the end of it with the Daily Record. I mean, it's a Daily Record to wipe her out, you know. And it just shows oppositions for opposition's sake. But if Stuart wants to, and then we can go on to the others.
I think it was a bit anal. Yes, they had a vote on Tuesday about free school meals, primaries 1 to 3, and the Labour Party had voted against. And that was the only thing that really came out of the entire exchange, because the statistics that were banded around, even a commentator is not going to analyse that in their column tomorrow morning in the Herald or the Scotsman, which statistics are right.
No, I don't agree with
I think they might do, because I think nobody's really argued with the SNP about their numbers, because the SNP rarely get it wrong. I mean, if they say in the last 30 years we've been in surplus, we have been in surplus in the last 30 years. And they use government stats to get there. Now, if she's found some statistical analysis that shows it to be different, that's quite important for undermining the case for independence.
Is that on the line again and fear-mongering?
Well, that was it.
I mean, what they will have done is they'll have taken the numbers and they'll have made no allowance for getting rid of
Lies, damn lies, statistics.
the House
exactly,
Awards,
yeah.
all the ways we're going to save money in independence.
No.
They'll make no allowance.
Figures don't
for
lie,
that.
but liars play with figures.
They'll have done what the Institute for Fiscal Studies did. You're going to carry on with the same expenditure as you have now, therefore you're too poor.
Yeah, but she wasn't even talking about that, Norrie. She was talking about history. She was
Yeah.
trying to say, you have suggested that in your white paper that Scotland's growth level's been held back, and for a period that you chose to talk about, we've been in surplus. I've actually requested from the Scottish Civil Service data for a wider period than that, and it shows that we'd be 2,500 worse off. Now, whatever she requested, he must have seen, I would presume, and I don't think he actually replied to it very robustly. Well, she said she wasn't talking about the future. You're right, because she doesn't want to, because they don't want to have a debate about Trident, House of Lords, mumble grunt.
Yeah, yeah.
But what she said was, you are claiming that the past should have been far, far better. I've actually got some statistics that says that's not true, and I don't think and it's important to blow that out of the water. I don't think he blew that out of the water. You see, I heard Jim Naughtie this morning talking to Neil, what's his name? The SNP minister. Anyway, Angus Neil. He was going on about, well, such and such economists said that only in 1 year in the past 30 years, even with the oil, would we have been in surplus, blah, 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 blah. And it was a selective choice of numbers that he wasn't good enough to respond to, just in the same way that last night on Newsnight, when they were asked various questions, the only person who had a sensible response, in my opinion, that in any way supported independence was Patrick Harvey, because your boy from Aberdeen didn't, and he hammered him. And I know he's a usual nasty self, but he hammered him. He hammered a few of the others as well.
It's selective figures. I mean, if you throw into Scotland their share of paying for infrastructure in London and the South East, that alone would keep us in deficit every year, let alone for
Well, you don't even have to go that
forces
you don't have to go,
and everything
you don't
else.
have to go that far.
And wars.
You just need to talk about Scotland's allocated share of the UK deficit. Had we not been in the UK,
we wouldn't have the deficit.
Our deficit wouldn't be as big as it is. But they're not literate enough where that subject is. Everybody who appears in front of that box should be told it's the economy, stupid, and here's a week's worth of economic training so that you can answer these questions properly.
Yeah.
But if you have,
I was going to say, can anybody remember who the Labour Chancellor was that took a 6-week course at Oxford?
No.
In economics.
Oh yeah. It was the working class lad who's just written a book. He was in charge of the post office at one point, and they made him shadow. No, he wasn't. They made him shadow chancellor. It was him, wasn't it? They made him shadow chancellor.
oh, you're talking about Alan Johnson?
Yeah, and then he couldn't cope with
this was
it.
old.
He didn't even know the rates of tax.
No, I know.
60s or 70s this was, and he basically took 6 weeks off and went and did
All right.
a crash course in economics. No, he was Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Okay.
But if
Osborne.
No, maybe.
Osborne hasn't even taken the 6 weeks course, so it's new.
But a bit about well, just jumping past Joanne onto Ruth, and now what she did was a good attack, but patently and totally typically Tory, dishonest and lying and selective. This person's been in a job for 30 months. Why has she
wait a
got
minute.
300,000? She's left the civil service
Well,
after
let's
30
go-
years.
wait a minute.
Stuart on
That's-
this one,
that-
because
right, the
Stuart's
article-
quite kind to Ruth sometimes.
There's a very strong article in today's paper about that. And it turns out Alex had the answer, which she gave, which was basically she'd been in the civil service for donkey's years.
Yeah.
And in fact,
Very
the big
years.
payoff reflected the fact that she's been in the civil service for a very long time. Not because she... Of course, there was a background to that. But apparently she was a very unpopular...
Oh, she was a bully. She was really
Very
nasty. She
unpopular
was
woman.
suited, yeah.
This, whatever her name
there
was,
was
in charge. She was in charge of Historic Scotland.
They were swamped with complaints about her from the start. So she basically had to go.
Yeah, but it doesn't look. I got made redundant when I retired, and I had to sign a compromise agreement. Let me tell you, if an organisation gives you more than you're legally obliged to get by dint of your contract and your service, I don't care if you worked there 142 years, never mind 30 bleeding months. The fact is, what she was trying to say, and it's a joke anyway, because the Tories are probably better than that than anybody else. But so you're quite right in that respect. But it was a very good question. If you've got a bunch of quangos with a bunch of people who've been made redundant or resigned, which is even worse, they've resigned, i.e. they've walked away, why are you paying them more than you need to pay them? But I tell you what, there is no answer to that.
No, but the answer to Ruth's equation was the
The
same.
answer
Line-
to that is the answer he gave.
No, it's not.
It was
No,
it
no,
was
it's-
contractual.
No, he
That
didn't.
was the answer he gave.
No, he didn't say that. No, she tried to maintain that the woman who had gone after 30 months had been given a large amount of money, and as I understood it, it was a large amount of money that was discretionary. Whether she'd been there 30 months or 30 years, if her contract says she
Is
was
this
to
on
get
top of her pension entitlement?
well, as far as I'm aware, that's what it was inferred to be. He did not say she was only given what she was contractually obliged to be given, and politicians couldn't interfere with that. Because that's what they said, if you remember, about Fred Goodwin, which
Yeah.
was literally true. And that was the defence. They couldn't stop Fred Goodwin getting his pension because he was legally obliged to get it. It was in his contract. It was paid for. Now, Salmon didn't say that. He said, well, the minister is only mandated to interfere if something really extraordinary is taking place, and this isn't that extraordinary because she'd been there for 30 years, not 30 months. But that's not an answer.
That's my hobby horse.
It's
on
half
this
an
one.
answer.
Stuart,
Well,
she's moved on, Ruth. She's the last couple of times she's been on, she's picked questions where she thought she was on safer ground.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is she moving in the right direction?
well, she didn't get picked on by Salmon for being a Tory
No.
and being responsible for cuts. So, I mean, she managed to avoid that attack. So I suppose she did quite well.
Yeah.
I don't think
that was
Salmon
my
was
first
particularly
one.
good today at all. You heard me earlier on, I'm watching it, I was annoyed that he was whittling on statistic after statistic, the same old statistics that
I
he's...
still, my point that I keep making, he's much more effective when he's incisive and short.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He was just going on and on and on, and I think he's been on the whiskey all...
Well, and he was also ho ho ho. Yeah, he still had a bit of Christmas spirit about him, and what's sort of thing. Other than that, I thought there was an awful lot of other questions came in. That was really quite.
Yeah, she
That was
did.
good.
The
That
presiding
was
officer
very,
managed to
very
all
good.
backbenchers. And the Neil Findlay question regarding the psychiatrist whistleblower.
Yeah, the gagging.
It seems a bit strange, this one. If they've had an independent
Inquiry.
Yeah.
inquiry that reported favourably
Yeah.
last year,
Maybe there's.
I mean, we're talking possibly a matter of weeks ago.
yeah.
So is it about her being gagged?
Well, I think that's what he was suggesting, that she had complained she'd been gagged, and Salmon said, well, if you read her compromise agreement, because I presume she was mid...
Is there a clue in the word compromise?
Well, there is.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
I need to ask, I've no idea what a compromise agreement is.
Well, I'll tell you what a compromise agreement is. It's dead simple. You have fallen out with your employer one way or another, and your employer wants rid of you. What they basically do is to say, well, if you agree not to slag us off, we'll give you this deal. Now, for example, in my instance, it's a standard thing if they make you redundant. It made me redundant. My contract said they had to give me a year's salary for redundancy, and that's what I got. There was a few bits arguing about grey areas, but the truth is I got what I was contractually obliged to. But a compromise agreement is designed to say, when we give you this amount of money and whatever else they might give you, you agree not to say anything nasty about the company. That's in essence what it is. And so you are gagged. You've agreed to be gagged, and it is legal to be so.
So
gagged.
they're actually bribing you to keep quiet.
In exceptional circumstances, certainly they didn't bribe me to keep me quiet because they gave me what I was due to get. But I think when you've got a dispute like this, and particularly when Ruth Davidson made this comment, well, she resigned. Well, actually, maybe she resigned. I suspect that's not true. I mean, my company said to me, well, it would be quite happy if you say you want to take early retirement or resign. I said, no, you made me redundant. Oh, that's what I'm going to tell the staff.
My point is perfectly simple.
She agreed
if
to it.
you get more money than you're legally entitled to, what else is it if it's not a bribe?
It is a bribe, yeah.
Yeah. but
Hang on, who are we
the
talking
thing-
about here?
Talking about this woman
Anybody?
who's in charge of the Historic Scotland.
The
I
NHS.
thought we were on
But the
Neil
same
Findlay.
situation with this
He's
doctor.
talking about the NHS, and you're talking about historic
No, there
Scotland.
were two people. There are two people that
Well, I'm
in similar
talking about
situations this
Neil
week.
Finley's question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so was
Well,
I.
as it happens,
You're on
Nick-
about.
No,
They're
no,
on about
all
historic
right.
Scotland.
The thing
No,
is now, they
It's-
can't legally gag you. They can't legally
They
gag
aren't
you.
gagging you. You're
have-
coming to.
You
an
have
agreement.
rights,
Well, what Salmon
which are
said.
over and beyond to
What-
the commercial
No,
contract.
exactly. And what Salmon said was, look, Mr. Findlay, have you read the compromise agreement? Because the compromise agreement cannot gag her on the following things. That's been made perfectly clear by the Health Secretary. So I think you're talking nonsense. She cannot claim to have been gagged because we couldn't gag her. That's what he said.
I mean, they are very similar. It's
No, but legally,
two
but
executives
legally-
getting a big payoff.
Exactly.
but legally now, in the NHS, you can't have a gagging contract
No.
because there are areas that it's illegal to gag you.
Yeah,
with.
exactly. And that's what he said. So he said
So-
it can't be true. And Findlay didn't get a chance to come back
I
and
think we're
argue
talking
about it.
cost purposes. There was nothing in there about a big payoff for the NHS.
No, it was about gagging.
It was about gagging.
Yeah.
That was it. She
No, but-
signed and she's agreed to the agreement. They've had an independent inquiry which has found no basis for any of the complaints. And don't forget as well, irrespective, some people can complain really well. Can actually, I've had it before, can drown you in complaints.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
yeah.
put a huge weight of complaints.
And you pay
They
them
call
to go
them
away.
vexatious complainers.
Yeah.
Even when they've been found to be unfounded, they still keep on and on because they have an agreement. They have a fixation on this thing that they have. I'm sorry, I was married to one that ended up with ludicrous. You know.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's why you got divorced, and that's why companies pay these people off because it's worth it.
Moving on, a new face to me, Margaret Mitchell, Conservative. Her question about
Easy,
sexual
right.
I
offences.
think that was very relevant. I think that one was
Oh,
very
yeah,
relevant
that's
because I think there she managed to make Salmon say something which was it was all about corroboration, effectively.
Aye, that was the sting.
Yeah, she whittled on a bit.
There were two things that I didn't like about his response. First was he wanted to defend the SNP government's position about changing the entire basis of the criminal law in Scotland to do away with corroboration. No, I don't actually agree with his position on that. So there's a bad start. But also, secondly,
Because you're always right.
That's a biased start.
no, but
It is because you're not a bloody lawyer and you don't know much about it.
but I mean, I've read the stuff, followed the arguments, can see both sides of the case. It's all only in relationship to sex offences that the question of corroboration really becomes a hot
Domestic
issue.
violence and
Yeah, where
Now, the
by
other-
nature there isn't
But there's a
any
very strong.
corroboration.
But the problem was that Salmon just carried on with the populist. He never refuted the populist argument underpinning Margaret Mitchell's thing about sexual offences. Sexual offences are down huge amounts. All the stats are in favour of the fact that, for example, we all know that 90% of sexual offences happen inside families. They're not the stranger on the dark path. And to maintain the fear of sexual offences when the numbers have completely collapsed over the last 30 years, I think that's just wrong. I mean, we don't seem to have any responsible politicians.
Well, Stuart, I disagree with you to the extent. I think Margaret Mitchell tried to raise a subject and then have a classic, I'm going to have a go about corroboration. But you see, if you read the Pete Warrior in the past month about corroboration, he's gone from, and he's a very intellectual academic. He's gone from, analysing the whys and wherefores of why it is being done, and then he finally came down this week on, I think the people who are complaining about it are wrong. I actually don't think it's that much different anyway, but I actually think, he said it was a good idea, he wasn't hugely enthusiastic about it. If anybody had a serious defence on the unique corroboration required in Scotland, I haven't heard it. The only people who seem to be defending it are the establishment, and I don't trust them as far as that's...
Well, I'm sorry, I don't like Kenny McCaskill's approach ever since he's been the Justice Minister. It reminds me of Callaghan in the 70s, and how you're sat there as a young socialist supporting the Labour Party in government, and yet every single move they make seems to be towards a dictatorship, or certainly authoritarian.
Well, actually, keeping the corroboration is actually keeping the dictatorship and keeping women down. I mean, if you're having a look at one point, if you have a look around the planet and you look at corroboration, right? you can be gang raped, but unless there's someone there
No,
to
but
corroborate
Alex's-
it, you go to jail. You know, I mean, sorry,
Alex's
it's
point
dodgy.
about it being unique, it is unique
Yeah.
in the world.
Yeah, so I don't, you know.
Well,
Apart,
well, certainly-
apart from some Sharia law.
I mean, I'm no
Yeah,
expert
right,
in whether
yeah,
it's
yeah.
unique in the world. I've never,
Yeah,
never heard
it's-
of it as unique.
It is
Yeah,
But I
exactly.
tell you this much, you never see a policeman on duty on his own in Scotland because there's no point.
I do, in Greg's.
Because there is no point attending an
Sorry, I couldn't
incident
help that.
on your own as a policeman because of corroboration,
Well-
which means it's much harder for an
You
individual
don't-
policeman
Stuart, you
to
don't see a
fit somebody
policeman.
up.
You don't see a policeman on duty in England on their own either. That's bullshit.
No, it is, because, I'm sorry, they'll just both lie.
Yeah, and
Exactly,
they're,
if it
and,
came
they're,
out.
and they're together to protect each other. A
Which
policeman on
makes-
his own
which makes
is
the
a lot
lie-
more vulnerable.
A more useful weapon.
Anyway, whatever our views are on corroboration, I think I have to confess it's a subject on which don't have any real experience. All I would say is, I think Margaret Mitchell tried a sneaky one
Yeah.
in a half-hearted, shitty attempt to have a go. And if she really wanted to have a go about corroboration, she should have done it properly.
She did
didn't
it. She
do
did
it.
at least ask. She did at least ask us a straightforward question.
Yeah,
because what she
yeah,
wanted was a
but-
pilot.
Where,
It's a
where
choice.
Well,
was-
that was reasonable, and he didn't disagree
Right.
with that.
Right, but
I agree with that.
That was the problem with her delivery, if you like, to get sort of technical about asking questions at question time. I mean, by the end of her speech, because it was a speech, I mean,
Yeah.
the presiding officer had to slap her wrist. You
Well,
weren't
there's
really
a-
sure
but
what the
there's
hell
another
she
issue.
wanted.
She slaps her wrist. The recalcitrant, well, no, you know, the offender carries on blethering, and she doesn't do something about it.
Well, do you know-
can't you switch that mic off?
Well,
Why not?
That
She did it to the
that was
person.
interesting because she has told people to sit down and shut up before.
Yeah.
But my sort of memory of this is she only does it when they're making party political points. If you've got a genuine question, she does give them a bit of leeway,
Yeah, I think that's true.
which, you know, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Because,
There was
as I say,
And she-
I've
and-
never seen
and
this
when was
woman
it-
stand up
And
before.
exactly, when was the last time she had a question? The truth is, she had already asked the question when the
Yes.
presiding officer had a go at her. She had said it right at the start, and then one rambled off
Look, the
again.
best political points were made in response to Bob Doris's question.
Yeah.
So Alex Salmond was able to, and I'm hoping to be able to see that in the,
His question
print
was
press,
the-
and it was about, he was able to equate the No campaign with the austerity
Oh yeah.
where everybody's suffering.
Well,
Now
we-
that's a new line.
Yeah, it's a new line, but if you watched Newsnight last night, it wasn't properly articulated whether it can be or not, because Brewer, who I hate with a vengeance, but the fact is, Brewer said, look, it's all very well telling us that you wouldn't cut this 25 billion. What would you do? And none of them had it, none of them.
Well, I'm sorry, Alex made, I think he succeeded with that point, and also he was able to get in the question, the whole question of housing benefit changes, and it's all down to the runaway inflation of everything in London and the South East.
Well, finally, but by God, we've been talking about the bedroom tax for a year, and that's the first time I've heard it said.
No, it's not. No, it's brought up before. He has used it.
Well,
before.
okay, it's first one
It's
I
just,
recall.
but it
But
wasn't
he did
effective.
actually he made two effective responses, but they kind of got lost amongst everything else that was going on.
Could I ask everybody what they thought of Mr. Chisholm's contribution?
Again, you've preempted me.
Pathetic.
It was Malcolm, you know.
Yeah.
I thought it was professional.
Yeah, but you shouldn't have been asked any
I
questions.
don't know what's going on. Why is Malcolm up every week now?
Well,
What's
because
that
he's
about?
because he's he's now decided, he's announced on his new newsletter that he will be retiring. I've got it in print. He will not be standing at the election, so he's not
Right.
going to pop out again.
So he wants to look useful to justify his pension.
Oh yeah, well.
Yeah, but that's
I like Malcolm.
yeah, but that's the confusing thing about Malcolm Chisholm, because as Salmond pointed out, and he was the last person to ask that question. That question was a very reasonable question for the Labour Party to put. You're totally reliant on the Tories winning. You know, if the Tories look as though they're going to lose, you're stuffed, and we're going to win. Now, to have, and we're going to put good policies into place. I mean, it was an open goal. And the other thing is, if he is so fucking principled, why in the last couple of months has he suddenly stood up and started saying things which indicate a serious lack of principle?
Look, where did it become the case that Tavish Scott, a failed Lib Dem Scottish minister, writes an opinion piece, and and that's going to decide the next general election in Westminster? I mean,
Yeah, but it's not only that. All these failures.
There are a lot
Who
more
has a
things
plan?
involved in the mix.
Simple, Stuart. The simple answer to that is I haven't read the article, but I suspect the article is another manifestation, just like the way the Liberal Party allowed the Labour Party. The Labour Party allowed the Liberal Party not to vote on the bedroom tax. They're talking about getting in a coalition with each other. And all Tavish Scott, I presume, has done, if I take what Chisholm was saying, was, well, Labour's going to win the next election, and we're your pals. We don't want to give up government. Whatever else is being said about what's going to happen to the Liberal Party, we could still hold the balance of power. So we'll talk to Labour.
I would say the key issue that we need to look at, well, as everyone knows, really, is the European elections coming up this spring, or is it May?
May, yeah.
And it's the effect of UKIP on the Tory vote that's going to decide the next general election in Westminster.
But also there's one bit that Malcolm said at the end there, which was about when they went and child policies. Now, he was alluding to the next Scottish parliamentary elections. I'm sorry, he's deluded.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't. If you remember, one of the things that hasn't been properly explained.
Oh yeah. They came out.
Here's our white paper. Attack. And by the way, 2 minutes later, Miliband stands up and says, "Oh, we're going to do the same thing."
Where are they going to get the money for it? Where are they going to get the cuts?
Nobody's answered that. But they stood up and said they're going to do the same thing. So what Chisholm was doing was following up with the debate earlier in the week.
You talking about the childcare policy?
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting about that's the second time they followed the SNP policy.
Yeah.
And the statement they made was, we will introduce it over 10 to 15
Years. Yeah.
So Lamont gets up and insists it's done immediately.
No, she said that before they said the 10 to 15 years. And that's one of the things that I didn't hear the debate earlier this week, and I certainly haven't seen anything in print or in any of the media, not that I'll give them a chance. However, the minute Miliband said that, the SNP should have been on their hind legs saying, "Excuse me?" Lamont said, how are you going to pay for that? Well, she actually said you should do it now. Yeah. And then a week later she said you haven't got the money to do it. And then her boss stands up and says we're going to do it over 50 to 20 years. And it was dead easy to determine why he said that, because he didn't want to be asked where the money was going to come from. So if he says I'm going to do it over 15 years, he can say, well,
underspend.
It'll be in our policy, and it'll be, so I don't have to find billions right now.
I think it's just called long grass.
I think it's just called.
Yeah.
I think it's just called taking the piss.
You sound as though you're saying something, but you're not.
Yeah.
The other one that I had a question today that's had a bit of a profile.
Kezia.
Our Kezzy. What's the curriculum got to do with her?
She's the opposition spokesman for education.
Oh, she's not the Treasury spokesman.
No.
I was being sarcastic.
Ian Gray's finance. Did you not remember his quote of the year last year?
I was being sarcastic after her appearance on Newsnight.
But I don't, just in case anybody forgot it last year at the end of the year, when Ian there, on the board, probably someone else has done a quick 6-week course on economy, asked the question when they were talking about the oil fund.
Where's the money coming from?
Where's the money coming from? Even his own side started laughing.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, I agree. He made a twat of himself asking the question that way. But it all comes back to the same point, guys. It's the economy. It's the economy. And you need to be able to say, we would have been that much better off had we been independent, so you can piss off. The premise is absolutely correct. Our growth rate would have been better, so it would have been better still. And if we were independent tomorrow, this is where our economy would start, and this is how we would then put these policies into place. And I don't think that's been done robustly enough. There's still too many people out in the street, if they ever listen to Gordon Brewer, who's asking questions like, well, are you telling me that the £25 billion cuts that the Chancellor said he's going to have to enact don't apply in independence? And there was no answer. There was no answer.
Should have had something there.
Yeah, there's a lack.
Finally, Mary Scanlon.
Oh, she's a fuckwit.
Mary
And your
Scanlon.
opinion of her is?
Mary Scanlon.
Our final
The
question.
old Tory.
I thought that was Margaret Smith.
No,
I mean,
the old dear. The old, not Margaret Smith's the one.
She's the education one, Margaret Smith.
Oh, I can't even remember what the question was. That's
Um,
kind of why I brought it up.
So I don't believe in euthanasia,
No,
but I
I
looked at
didn't
Mary
write it
Scanlon.
Right, well,
at
what-
some point,
Oh.
one commentator or one academic called Mackenzie got referred to something they'd said got referred to by both Labour and the Tories, I think.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was.
Some teacher, he's a leader of the Scottish Secondary Teachers.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Something.
No,
the-
No, it's not.
Kesey's, that was Kesey's
Kesey's,
question.
oh, yeah, Kesey's,
Anyway,
yes.
well done, Mrs. Scanlon. We kind of remember what you asked.
Oh, she's an irrelevance.
Finally, Claire Adamson. Nice opportunity for an SNP kicking a Labour when they asked for, what was it, 10,000 places in Labour. Labour asked for 10,000
I know.
2-year-old nursery places.
Give them 15.
The SNP are going to give them 15.
Yeah, but didn't they say that?
Smacks of the, what was it? What was the budget they did that to them in with apprenticeships?
Oh,
we
yeah.
want 25,000 apprenticeships. Ah, well, can he do that? We're going to have to give you 30.
No. But they see that with the apprenticeships. Just as a point of information here, it's when you don't get the right information. Most of these so-called
point of information,
apprenticeships,
boy.
these apprenticeships are business administration. They cost 1,200 quid. Proper apprenticeships, i.e. engineering, etc., 6,000. You'll be hard put to find any of them. They're just going for the figures rather than the quality. Was it? Never mind the quality, feel the width.
Well, you might be right. I was surprised at that 15 versus 10,000 reference, because if that actually is not just a load of specious bullshit, why didn't they hammer them with that during the week? I didn't hear that anywhere. I didn't hear the debate because I wasn't here, but it was. If it was that good, you've asked for 10,000 and we've already given 15.
Second time I've heard it this week. Second time I've heard it.
Just as a wee aside, right? Watching them at the carry-ons on at Westminster, which are profoundly depressing, looking at either side, and then actually starting to look at this lot. And I'm looking at people on both sides, thinking, yeah, they're all right, Egypt, you know, and all sides are pretty well staffed with Egypts. So that's one of the reasons I'll be definitely voting yes, because I might be able to get a bunch of competent people to work together for the benefit of
just
Scotland.
one final point, taking that last thing. Alex did miss a trick when he had the opportunity to put the boot in about Cameron being too posh to participate. He really should have hammered Davidson for that, Ian Davidson, because he should have said, and it's patently obvious that the Labour Party are on the same side as the Tory party, because Mr. Davidson is the human sheep, he told the world in Westminster at Prime Minister's Questions yesterday that the last thing that the No campaign wanted was a Tory coming up and trying to sell it, because we're going to sell it for you. You're in bed with them, you're just the same. Which is why I sent you that picture the other day of that was a cracker.
And
you know,
Davidson's going to sell it in the Neanderthal fashion?
yeah.
With a big club.
Well, I know.
Last word, Stuart.
Well,
Soon
no,
as
I'm
you
just
don't
wondering,
get a chance.
what was this picture?
It was a picture of Cameron and Miliband split 50-50.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one,
Their
yeah.
two faces put together, and it was better together underneath it. It was a
on Facebook.
cracking, simple
No, I'm
presentation.
sorry. The best better together one, Sarky one this week was on Wings, with the bottle of HP sauce in it.
On the Tanix
Yeah.
tea cake. I actually printed that. I cut that one off. I've kept that one. That's an absolute crack.
Stuart,
Well, look, I think we should score.
scores on the door.
Just wondering what it would taste like,
It's
actually.
already gone well over half an hour.
Disgusting.
I'm going to shock you. I'm going to give Joanne Lamont 7.
Oh, no.
7?
Oh, God.
Yeah. Give her 7 because she started to sound confident all through. And Simon's got to hit her with really got to put her down, but he doesn't. Alec, I thought he was particularly poor today. I'm only going to give him 7. I think he missed out on an awful lot of opportunities. He wittered on far too long. He didn't get in his real briefings, presumably. Ruth, I'm going to give her an average of 5 again. She managed to not get slapped in the face by Mr. Salmon. Willie Rennie, he's got to have 5 because he didn't speak.
He's not getting scored. Sorry, come on.
And the presiding officer, I thought, I'm getting fed up with her, just not. You know, if you discipline a child and then the child ignores you, you've got to do something about it. You don't just let them get away with it.
Is that why you like the Ask Stuart?
I'm an authoritarian. So I'm giving the presiding officer 3.
Yeah.
Go.
Right, Joanne, a presentation starting off, yeah, definitely worth the 7. But when you actually, no, I haven't finished it. But the content, which was absolutely pesh, so 5. Yeah, give her an average of 5. Ruth Davidson, again, started off with a good presentation, and just turned out to be a lying Tory, you know, at the end. So, yeah, I'll give her 5 as well.
High praise from you.
Yeah, well, I'll give her 5, yeah, because she did start it off, you know, just as good as Joanne and all that. Alec, too much ho-hoing. He just needed one of those red uniforms and a beard on. 6, wasn't that impressive today because he did miss an awful lot of tricks. And a presiding officer, yeah, about as good as the first 2, so I'll give her 5 as well. Wasn't anybody else, was there?
Alex?
Yeah, I'll give Alex 7. I give Jolo 5 because I think her question was good, but it was classic. She was reading from a script and she couldn't actually attack the damn thing properly.
You never attacked her for reading the script to this week.
Yeah, well, I think it's a given that she reads the script.
Okay. I'll give Ruth 6 because I think your analysis is absolutely right. That, you know, she's decided that raising questions where she can be hammered for being a Tory is a loser. So let's try and pick anything else. So I give her 6 for that. Presiding officer, I give her 5 because I think she was all right. I mean, I don't have to tell somebody off, but switching that microphone off would have been over the top. Is that it?
I don't remember much about what Joanne said. I know what she said, but there's no kind of memory of her being there. So she's still not. She's not going to get recognised by what she does.
I think the first word began with an F and the last one was all.
So I'm going to give her a 5. Alex, I wasn't impressed. I take your point, Phil. He was whittering on. I just think he's much more effective when he gets up and goes whack.
Yeah, it
and
was too
sits
ho-ho.
down again, you know.
Christmas spirit.
So I'm only going to give him a 6. Ruth, she gets a laugh. I mean, she was more entertaining.
Yeah, she was.
You know,
She was
which,
good, very
which
good presentation.
She stays in the head. I'm going to give her a 6 as well. My God. The presiding officer, I thought she did a good job by allowing Margaret, whatever her name was,
Yeah.
to actually get a question out.
Yeah.
And there was nothing really for her to discipline.
No, there wasn't. No.
I'm going to give her a 6.
But wait a minute. She announced in the paper somewhere over the holidays that she was going to be cracking down on the length of time that
the
party
main
leaders are
yeah.
taking to ask questions and for Salmon to answer them. And I don't see any evidence of her taking action. She's all gas and not.
Well, there was a lot more
action.
questions.
There was a lot more backbencher
questions. So she could allow a backbencher to whittle on for a
I
while.
would say she still hasn't actually allowed the famous 5 at the back.
Famous
Any
5.
questions?
No, and I
Margaret
think that
McDonald,
is-
Patrick Harvey,
What's
the
that?
2.
It's because they would make the rest of them, including Salmon and co, look like.
Well, I know, but it's not democratic.
Somebody needs to have a serious word with Alex. His performances, I think, are dropping, but I think they're dropping because he's not being as aggressive. He's good when he's aggressive. I mean, he was good against Malcolm.
But do you know who makes him look not as effective? And that's his deputy.
Sturgeon.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I'm sorry. I mean, I don't know how many times I've watched that tube squirming. No, gonna go and tell her. You know, Carmichael. It's amazing to watch.
Right, the actual scores. Start at the bottom. Presiding officer only got 19. Looks like Stuart's attitude to that is supported by most. Ruth and Joanne 22.
That's not true. It's distorted by Stuart, because otherwise she'd have been 22.
Who? Ruth?
True.
No, this
No.
presiding officer, she's
No.
only got the lowest score because you hammered her.
Well, she deserves it. I'm
But
getting,
you're kind of following your own view. I'm
kind
not
of.
suggesting you should do otherwise, but I don't think it's been.
Alex is one with 26, but
Not done very
that's
well.
not the margin we would expect.
No,
from
it's
him.
not. It's not.
Um,
They need
so,
to.
up your game,
Yeah,
Salmon.
well, they need to up their game economically across the piece, in my opinion. All of the spokesmen need to be better at it.
That's it for today, folks. Thanks for watching, and we'll
Happy
see you
New Year.
next week.